I'm assuming you see it right now.
Yep.
Thank you everyone for joining us. We're just waiting. We'll wait a couple more minutes until we have a couple more people joining. It's 6:59 right now, so just hold on. Please mute your phones if you can, and we will be beginning shortly. Thank you.
But not what you think. It says 20% off. Well, it's not off.
Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining. This is the proposed Warrenville Grove Path Public Information and Input meeting. We will begin shortly. We'll give it another minute. If everyone can please put their phone or computer audio on mute, microphone on mute. Thank you. All right, I think we can begin. Again, this is the proposed Warrenville Grove Path Public Information and Input meeting from City of Warrenville. Thank you everyone for joining us. Just some housekeeping rules for the Zoom. I'm sure everyone has used Zoom before, but if you can please keep your phones on mute, that would help during the presentation. And afterwards, we will have a comment and question period. I believe we're going to have the chat enabled. Natalia, mine is still disabled, I'm not sure. We will try to have the chat enabled so that if you want to speak during that comment period, please type in that chat and say, you know, name, address, and then, you know, what I would like to speak, or I have a comment, or I have a question, something like that. If we can't get the chat working, I'll just For ease, I'll go down the participant list. I have a list here of everyone who's joined, and you can either say if you want to make a comment or not, and then we could just kind of go on that way. So it's kind of more scheduled since we have a little bit of procedure because there's so many people on the call. So with that, my name is Christine Hocking. I am the Senior Civil Engineer for the City of Warrenville. There are a number of staff present on this Zoom virtual meeting. We also have Ron Menser, our Director of Community and Economic Development. We have Natalia Demovesova, our Senior Planner. We have David Romero, our Civil Engineer. And then we also have representative from the Forest Preserve District, who is a partner with this project, Kevin Horsfall. And with that, we will get started. So a brief list of what we're going to be talking about during this short presentation. We're going to go over a history of the project, how this project came about. Then we'll go into more specifically why now. Why are we talking about this project right now? What mechanisms have been triggered that require us to talk about this publicly and also bring it to City Council? Go over some proposed concept design, emphasize the concept part. We've put together a plan and exhibits that are shown on the website and a cross section, but those are very concept, high level, just to get the conversation going and allow City Council to see something visually about approximate locations of where the path would go, what it would look like, etc. Same thing along with the costs. We've put together a cost estimate based upon previous input from the Forest Preserve on projects they have done in the past, similar types of projects. And also I'll talk about some of the funding sources that may be used to help fund this project. We'll go over a decision timeline, when it will be presented to City Council, and then we'll go into your questions and your comments. Like I said, we'll try and get the chat enabled. If not, we'll just kind of go methodically down the participant list to make it easy. And then after that, we'll come back and we'll talk about next steps, what you guys as the public can do to make your comments known, etc. We will go through all this and have time at the end to provide. We'll have our email addresses up there as well as contact information and the project website. The project website's a pretty powerful tool for us right now. It has a lot of the same stuff that we're going to be talking about tonight. It has a public survey on there, as well as some other information like exhibits, etc. So with that, I'll turn it over to Ron Menser. He will talk about the history of the project and how it came about. Ron? Ron, you're on mute.
Sorry about that. Thank you. I appreciate it. We wanted to start out by providing some background and history on kind of the origins of this project and why it's actually something that we're discussing at this point in time. Imagine that there's plenty of people in the community that have never heard of this project, wondering why the city's talking about this, where did it come from? Even people that have heard about it, I would imagine that a fair amount of those really don't truly understand where the initial concept for this project started and why it's being brought forward at this particular point in time. So if you've been in the community for anywhere more than 6 years, you probably have some recollection and memory of all of the massive amount of work that was done along and in the DuPage River corridor in the early part of in the 2000s, beginning maybe 2003, 2004, and extending up till maybe 4 or 5 years ago. That work was really a complete cleanup of the DuPage River and then some extensive restoration work that was done in the section of the DuPage River that started in the southern portion of West Chicago, extended through the city of Warrenville down into the north part of the city of Naperville. That entire section of the river was classified by the United States EPA as a Superfund site because of the heavy metal radioactive thorium contamination that had been deposited in that section of the river over a number of decades in the mid 1900s. And extending towards the latter part of 1900s. All that contamination originated in West Chicago from a former Defense Department contractor that used thorium as part of the things they were producing for the Defense Department, and through stormwater runoff, it ended up ultimately into the DuPage River and settled out along the DuPage River, especially in slow water areas, one of which was the area that existed behind the former Warrenville Grove Dam. If anybody, certainly the people that live there know this, but anybody that really paid attention to that or experienced that area of the river, it was very slow water conditions, and it was ripe for to allow for this thorium to settle out. So ultimately, as part of that thorium cleanup project, that section of the river was essentially completely reconstructed. And I would make the analogy that that reconstruction is very similar to what one might expect and experience with a road reconstruction project, where the road is shut down, the road is completely torn out, and all new infrastructure is put in it, replaced in the where the old road used to exist. Well, that's kind of what happened in many sections of the DuPage River as part of this project, including the area running through the Warrenville Grove. They blocked off the river north of or around Butterfield Road, and they piped the river water around the former riverbed, and they completely reconfigured that section of the river, and then they restored it all. Well, as they worked from the north and West Chicago down into Warrenville, it became pretty clear that not only the magnitude of the project, but the actual end result left the river in a much better condition than what had previously existed. And the ecosystem was much more diverse and a much higher quality, and the river itself really had a much higher amenity value for the public. So that's kind of happening as part of one of the things that was going on, not exactly related to that, but overlapping with that. In 2006, the city council determined that it was appropriate and necessary for the city to develop a long-term land use and infrastructure improvement plan for the geographic area of the community referred to as the Old Town Civic Center sub-area. That's kind of the historic core of the city of Warrenville. The map on the screen that you're looking at, the colored map, is essentially the Old Town Civic Center sub-area map from the sub-area plan that was ultimately developed. The Old Town area is the area that surrounds the Warrenville Road bridge crossing of the DuPage River, and the Civic Center area is the geographic area that generally surrounds the City Hall, Library, Park District, Police Department complexes up near Batavia and Butterfield Road. So ultimately, the City Council determined that it was appropriate to hire a qualified and experienced consultant to work through this planning process. They did that in 2016. Concurrent with that, they created a citizen and business leader steering committee to help oversee that planning process and guide that planning process and provide input throughout the planning process. And for the better part of the year, the consultant, city staff, the steering committee did all kinds of analysis on the strengths, weaknesses, and opportunities that existed in the Old Town Civic Center sub-area. A big component of that process was facilitating a pretty robust public input process. And ultimately, that process culminated in 2017, March of 2017 to be specific, with the City Council's unanimous adoption of the Old Town Civic Center sub-area plan. And why is that important for tonight's meeting? Because that plan is really the kind of the foundation for this project. It was that planning process where this potential project was identified by the community as something that would be very desirable and ultimately became a very important integral component of the sub-area plan that was ultimately approved by the City Council. The thought process on this particular trail improvement project was that not only would it provide a new and desirable link between ultimately the Old Town area to the south and the Civic Center to the north, but it would provide a lot of improved access for the public to what at at the point in time when the plan was developed, was envisioned to be a much higher quality and much more desirable forest preserve district system along the DuPage River in that area. So that's really where this project started from, is that planning process. A few years later, in 2010, the city council, or the city's Bike and Pedestrian Advisory Commission, developed the phase 2 of the city's bikeway implementation plan that was ultimately presented to and approved unanimously again by the city council. And in that plan identifies a whole lot of infrastructure improvement projects throughout the entire community that would be both desirable and necessary to enhance non-motorized mobility in the community. And this particular project was identified as one of the priority projects in that bikeway implementation plan of 2010. So between those two plans, those are the kind of the building blocks for why we're here talking about this particular project tonight. It's the community, primarily the community input that was provided through those planning processes that identified these from a community, this project from a community perspective is something that would be desirable and something the city should work towards implementing when it had the opportunity to do so, which kind of brings me to an obvious question of, so what's taken so long? Those plans were developed 10 and 13 years ago. Why all of a sudden are we talking about this? Well, when you think back and you take a closer look at the plans that I was just referencing, it clearly identified and recognized that this particular trail improvement project would need to be constructed on public property that was almost entirely owned and controlled by the Forest Preserve District. And if you think back about the period from when our plans got adopted until somewhat just recently, the Forest Preserve District had their hands full dealing with all kinds of other higher priority projects that were more important and took more resources away from the possibility of moving forward with this, what kind of is more of a community trail improvement project. So the Forest Preserve District just didn't have the desire to engage with the city on moving this forward. There were other public infrastructure projects that the Forest Preserve District and the city were discussing that had mutual importance to both bodies, including this project in the early 2010s. Ultimately, in 2016, if you want to switch there, in 2016, the city and the Forest Preserve entered into a series of intergovernmental agreements that outlined in some detail how the city and the Forest Preserve District would collaborate on the design, implementation, funding, and future maintenance of a variety of public infrastructure projects that really needed to be constructed together in order to be successful. So ultimately, one of those intergovernmental agreements dealt with a series of potential path improvement projects in and adjacent to the city of Warrenville limits. And this particular project was one of those path improvement projects. It outlined where the path would go generally on Forest Preserve District property. It identified that the city had a 5-year period to make a decision on whether or not the city was going to allocate its share of funding to the project. And it identified who was going to design, oversee the construction, and which entity was going to maintain the project long term. So again, that agreement was approved by the City Council and the Forest Preserve District Board of Commissioners in early 2016. And it's amazing how quickly 5 years goes by, but 5 years is quickly coming to close here. And ultimately, the City Council needs to make a decision on whether it's going to move forward and allocate the funding necessary to build this project before January 5th, 2020. So the process that we're working through right now is to
2021, that was a mistake on the PowerPoint.
Yeah, thank you. Sorry about that.
That was my fault.
Thanks for the clarification. So the process we're working through right now is to try to bring the community up to speed on what this project's all about. make sure that we try to address as much of the questions that the community has about the project, get public input from the community on whether or not people feel this is an appropriate project and a desirable project for that matter for the community, for the city council to move forward and allocate funding towards and try to move forward in the coming future. So this meeting is part of that process. As Christine alluded to earlier, there's a public survey document that's a Survey Monkey that's available on our website that people can provide input through. Individuals that are concerned about the project or have specific feelings that they want the city council to be aware of about the project can certainly send an email or a letter to the city council and they'll get that. But the intent is to collect all the public input we can get in the somewhat near-term future here and provide that to the city council, along with the staff recommendation on whether to proceed with this project or not. And the city council can use that information to make an informed decision on whether or not to continue forward with this particular, moving this project to the next stage.
Thank you, Ron. I gotta stop drawing on my paper. So just it looks like the chat is open. So let me take a minute, and if anyone will want to comment later, please enter the chat and put your name, address, and that you'd like to make a comment. I've also put in that chat the link to the project website, which I'm sure a lot of you are aware of, but that is where Ron was talking about the survey is located, as well as our contact information. So as part of putting together some concept plans to show the city council just visually, what location we're talking about, we know obviously the path is going to be located on public property. So if you're looking at this exhibit, it is probably kind of small on your screen. All of these exhibits are available on the public website or project website. They are also available in person at the Community Development Department to view. We have full paper copies of these. If you'd like to see them in person, you can also make appointments, etc., obviously with social distancing protocols in place. But this exhibit in front of us is showing obviously the location of the path in yellow, proposed Warrenville Grove path. This dotted black and white line that you see here is the delineating property line boundary between the forest preserve to the north and the city to the south. You can see that there are a number of private residential properties along that area just north of Batavia Road. So the project limits approximately would be located starting from the Warrenville Grove Park. There's the little parking lot over there. It would run along the alignment, generally located where the previous bypass pumping and truck access route was done from the river cleanup that Ron was speaking about back in 2010s. And end up at the Prairie Path, connecting into the Prairie Path. Exactly, where along the Prairie Path it would be connected to will be something that will be done if this project moves forward. That typically design details is done during preliminary and final engineering design. It is not something that we typically look at this point conceptually. Again, conceptually, a cross section, this is something that the Forest Preserve District has used in previous projects, something similar, but typically when there's woodlands on both sides, there will be provided a clear zone on either side of the path. Right now we're showing it as 10. That is a typical cross section for a bike path. We do know that narrower bike path or multi-use paths have been approved. That's dependent on the project location, sensitive areas, etc., that are located. So 10, again, conceptually, we're showing 10. It would be an asphalt path. Going back to this diagram, the blue and orange areas, that is the floodplain of the DuPage River. As you can see, this path would be along the outer edge and within the floodplain in most areas. because it is an area that could be flooded often, asphalt paths are more preferred from the Forest Preserves District standpoint, because there's less maintenance and less thinking that, you know, there'll be washout if it was another type of aggregate or limestone type of path. So that's what we're showing here. The asphalt path, there would be, like I said, the clear zone and plantings of native types of plantings up to the existing trees. This also doesn't show, obviously there's a lot of residents that will back up to, not exactly to the path, but within the vicinity of the path if this project moves forward. And similar to other projects that we do, we would work with the individual residents to create some type of buffer, whether it's with plantings or another type of, you know, like a split rail fence has been used before, but there would be some type of buffer most likely added in if it was, you know, in the areas that are pretty tight and pretty close. The area along Riverview Drive is another area where we would have to look at in deeper detail during the that occurs during the preliminary and final engineering of the exact location. Obviously, there are some mature trees pretty close to the street there, and you know, the area near the river has been restored. So we would have to work with the Forest Preserve District to see where exactly the greatest alignment would have to be down there. So I talked about native plantings. There would obviously also be interpretive and wayfinding signage. That's pretty typical with all Forest Preserve District projects. And then there would be the potential for lookouts in areas where the path wouldn't be very close to the river. We could make areas where we could add a potential like lookout so that you can be brought closer to the river and view the river from those type of lookouts. So all these things are conceptually ideas. Like I said, this all kind of gets hammered out usually during preliminary engineering if we get to that point. But this is just kind of showing you what it could potentially look like as the concept cross-section. So when we put the cross-section and plan together, we can estimate construction costs. And these construction costs that we estimated, again, we had the Forest Preserve's expertise in trying to create construction costs for a type of project like this. And we estimated about $450,000 for the actual construction of the project. With engineering, that goes up to about $550K. That is estimated costs at this time based upon the alignment and the cross-section that you just saw. Potential funding sources. Ron talked about the IGA with the Forest Preserve. In that IGA, intergovernmental agreement, it stipulated the Forest Preserve source, the funding source from the Forest Preserve would be $250,000 for this project. There would also be potential for using city developer park donations, as well as going after potential grant funding. Grant funding for a type of project like this could come from the state level, like the IDNR. They have various bike path grants that this might be a good use for, as well as potentially federal grants. So if City Council decided to move forward with this project, city staff would be looking for grant funding possibilities for this project. We've done that. That's pretty typical with all of our projects. The other projects in town that are currently ongoing, like Trailhead Project, as well as the Mac Road Bridge and Trail Project, those both have funding grant funds associated with them in the tune of, that would pay for approximately 75 or 80% of the construction costs and construction engineering, typically, sometimes more depending on the type of project. But that's, that's a way that it could help pay for part of projects like these. Let me try to get rid of this. Okay. So decision timeline. Ron talked about the fact that we're going to be taking, today obviously is the 12th public information and input meeting. On the 14th, we would take all of the public information survey results from the survey that's on the web. Obviously feedback from tonight, anyone who wants to speak tonight, we would take that feedback as well as staff recommendation, and we would present that at the City Council's Public Works and Infrastructure Committee of the Whole meeting on December 14th. At that time, they would make a recommendation or not to the City Council, and so that next City Council meeting would be on December 21st, and at that time, City Council would make the decision on whether or not to fund the project. So at this time, Ron, unless you have anything else to add at this time.
No, I don't have anything else at this point.
Okay. At this time, we will take the public questions and input. I put a little bit of information on the screen right there. Like I said, we're going to call upon the order in the chat box. Then those on the phone will be asked to provide comments if they would like. Obviously, please try and keep the questions and comments concise. If someone has already stated a comment or question previously, just say, I agree with so-and-so about their question about this and this and this. So we'll make that note when we put together all of the comments for City Council. Obviously, be respectful of everyone's time. And if you have longer questions or comments, you can meet with Ron or myself in person, or you can email either of us. Like I said, we'll have our emails at the end of this PowerPoint. My email is also available on the project website, and all staff email is available on the general Warrenville website. So with that, I'll go to the group chat, and we have Loretta Regalny. If you would like to unmute yourself, and you can make your comments.
Hello. Thank you for the time. I actually have a long list, so I will do my best to keep it concise. I'm actually on Riverview Drive. I've actually lived here my whole life, so I'm familiar with a lot of the things that you were talking about, including the cleanup. And that cleanup was really great for this area because obviously it cleaned up the river of the chemicals, but the plantings of these trees that are becoming mature all along that area, there's a bird area kind of back behind the forest preserve there that, I mean, only this year and maybe next year it has started to blossom, where we see eagles and hawks and all these beautiful animals and even deer. I was on the prairie path today, and along the river there was a buck and a doe, and they were enjoying the water. And I'm just thinking about all these things. And now you want to take 17 feet, and that along our area, 17 feet is about half of that forest preserve to the river, which is all the trees. And I even think about all the trees that you took along the library area, every single tree. So I'm very against that, because the trees are what keep the birds here. And I mean, to see eagles is amazing. My whole life, I've never seen an eagle here. So that's kind of just that situation. I mean, and also actually there's beaver and there's coyote. There's a whole trail of animals. They kind of go in between this whole area, and they've created their own path. And so that's very important to me. And that's what I thought that whole cleanup was, to make that ecosystem what it is today, or what it's becoming. So the floodplain is another issue that I have. So, living here forever, we've had our basement flood, and that cleanup really fixed that, which has been great, but it still floods over there. There's definitely, when it rains, there's a lot of water. And that's an issue for me, because I go along under Warrenville Road, there's a path, and then there's also where you can take the crosswalk over Warrenville Road. And it smells. Nobody ever wants to go under that bridge because it floods and it's disgusting. Though it gets dirty and nobody uses it. That is what I feel this path would become, because it is in a floodplain such as that. I feel like it's redundant. So there's clear path on the sidewalk on Batavia Road. There's also the bike pathway on Batavia Road. And then there's an entire prairie path that takes you to the same point. So there are 3 points to get you to the same location from point A to point B. And to add a fourth, it's like, it gets a little out of hand, I think. Just talking about upkeep, I'll kind of leave that one alone. Trees, so that's another one. So now that, Butterfield Road has been widened, we are far in on Riverview Drive and we can hear the street noise, which we have never heard before when it was a 2-lane highway. And the trees over there really buffer that. They don't buffer it because my son can't even open his window at night because he hears all the motorcycles and everything, but it does buffer a little bit. And so to take those trees down, I have a real problem with that because it's going to open up that sound. I can be in front of my house and I feel like someone's zooping down the street, but it's actually someone on Butterfield Road. So I really need those trees as sound buffer. And then the lights on Butterfield Road are like a stadium. Talk about parking. I know that you're kind of in the preliminary, but there would be a parking issue. There's no place for people to park on our street and there's a little parking lot at the end, but that's kind of a private thing. So I would like, if you can elaborate on that. And that's actually kind of all I have.
Okay, thank you, Loretta. I forgot to mention, so we're going to be taking everyone's comments and questions, and then we will be putting on the website a Q&A because there will most likely be a lot of the same questions. So we will put the Q&A on the website before the end of next week, answering everyone's questions. If after that you have further questions that haven't been answered, feel free obviously to email us and we will respond to those and then just keep adding to the Q&A on the website. But we feel like in this virtual environment, that's probably the best way to answer everyone's questions and comments because this is an input meeting. So I think that, and that'll help other people who aren't here answer or listen to the answers to the questions because they'll be on the website. So thank you again, Loretta. Next on the list is Jerry Sugri. Jerry, if you'd like to unmute yourself.
Thank you. My comment is I'm all in favor of this project. I think it's wonderful that we're going to bring a bite to the community, a way to go and see the river on a asphalt way. Asphalt is the new thing now for people with disabilities. And I think we're going to invite lots of people from the Warrenville horizon who are most likely good chance that they might be in a wheelchair or in a walker or something, but give them a chance to come and ride this public path and see the beautiful river. I think it's absolutely wonderful that the city is going to consider this. Thank you.
Thank you, Jerry, for your comments. I think, Connie, I think you're next on the list. I wasn't sure if you were just letting us know that it's you or did you want to make a comment?
No, I asked about the trail surfacing just to get information about that, and you answered it in the next screen. So I apologize.
Okay.
Hit the trigger. And then I appreciate that you refer to it as a multi-use trail as opposed to a bike trail. I just will tell you one of the reasons asphalt can be a problem, and it is a benefit for the reasons you stated, but it becomes a speedway for bicycle users. And when you have a limestone path, it makes it more considerate of pedestrians and all kinds of other users as well, including it's better for cross-country skiers too. And it makes it simpatico with the IPP, with the Illinois Prairie Path, and with the rest of the regional trail system. But I know that it's in the floodplain, so I kind of get that, unfortunately.
Gotcha. All right. Thank you for your comments.
Mm-hmm.
Let's see. We have Byron Miller. If you'd like to unmute yourself.
Thank you. Byron Miller, 30W098 Willow Lane in Warrenville. I had got a comment. First of all, I really like the idea. We've often walked from the place where you can park and then walk across the bridge. And then unfortunately you have to go up on the road to get around. But I do go under the bridge and I don't smell it. That's never been a problem to me. Sometimes you have to walk around the water a little bit, but that's not really an issue. I'd really like to see it, but I did wonder, and I guess from what you talked about, this doesn't necessarily eliminate some other project. I guess kind of the question is, do we have alternatives that we might be blocking off because we do this. Because I don't know what the other elements of the plan were that was discussed back in 2016 and what the priority list might have been. But given the impending deadline, I'm in favor of it. Not hearing yet about alternatives.
Okay, thank you for your comment. Yeah, we can add that to the frequently asked questions and get you a little bit more information on that. So thank you for your comments. And we have Brooke Leathers would like to comment.
Hi, I also live on Riverview Drive. So this is directly impacting me and my family, and we obviously have some concerns. A lot of them are duplicative of Loretta's, as we both live on this same street. One of our main concerns is Riverview Drive is a dead end road. What is the city's plans for inviting all these people onto our dead end road? There's currently no turnaround. So all these people enter our street and there's nowhere for them to go. They're not aware that it's a dead end road. So they come down at excessive rates of speed multiple times, which is very unnerving to us and our children that could be on these roads. And parking. So if we have this dead end street, I mean, you're just inviting DuPage County Forest Preserve access to our road, which cannot handle that amount of population. Has there been an impact study as to how many people you believe you will be inviting into this area? Another main concern, obviously, is the flooding. If you're going to be right in front of our home where this path is planning to be built, has a ditch in it. That ditch is imperative to stop the flooding of our homes. If that ditch is altered in any means, we will most likely be taking on water into our homes. So that's something that's a huge concern, especially if the path is going to be asphalt. Where's the water going to absorb now? Now we have 10 feet of this very small tract of land that's now become asphalt. I mean, I thought the city was concerned they used those permeated bricks on, what was that, Warrenville Road. And now you're just going to put asphalt right in a floodplain. This river does flood multiple times a year. The river does reach Riverview Drive at least multiple times. And the underlayment of the asphalt will be eroded. I worry about the cost of the continual replacement and maintenance of this type of material. Also, we have no buffer between our houses and this path, being there's no land on that side. I want to know exactly where the path is going to enter from the prairie path. Are all those trees on the prairie path going to be cut down? Obviously, the new lighting on Butterfield Road it's very intrusive to our homes. It's basically like having someone hold a flashlight into our windows at night. You know, I don't think the rest of the city may not have to deal with that, but we directly deal with this issue, the noise. And now we're going to be inviting more people into this area. What is the safety concerns? Who's policing this area? You now have various individuals traipsing through these backyards, which is very dark, very secluded. I mean, I worry for my family. I mean, now you have people, now they have direct access to the backyards of these people's homes. Whose responsibility is it? I never see Forest Preserve police on the prairie paths, and now we have this secluded area that is not going to be monitored. Is there a time span that people can not be on this path? Is it the same as the normal Forest Preserve? The flooding, the safety, the impact study, the traffic being invited onto our road, obviously the trees, the nature. If we ever touched a stick of material on that land, the Forest Preserve would be angry with us because upsetting that ecosystem. And now it's just going to be a paved asphalt path. I just think it's an invitation for crime to these people's houses that's secluded, and who's going to be watching over this and the water issues and the flooding. I think I've covered the majority of my comments. Wait, one other thing. Are we worried that we're facing an economic crisis right now? Is the funding going to be available for all these grants. I'm not sure how city funding works, but to me, as the majority of our citizens are facing financial crisis, and the city is going to be spending over $1 million on this land, I'm just not sure if that's the correct usage of our money or if the funding's available in the state. I think that sums up my comments.
Great. Thank you, Brooke. I guess to clarify on my previous slide, the total cost would be 550,000. Those were, one was with engineering, one was without engineering.
Okay.
So it's 550. Just wanted to make that clarification before we move on. So thank you for your comments. And I did also receive obviously your email as well. Let's see, the next person is Emily Larson. Would you like to ask your question?
Yes.
Yep.
I know that there are properties on the east side of the river. I'm gonna straighten out the river, east and west sides, that go to the middle of the river. So I'm looking at your map. So none of the properties that are involved in this path, none of those properties go into the river as they do on the other side?
That is correct.
Okay, thank you.
Tim Toth, would you like to make a comment or have a question?
Sure. Tim Toth, 28W318 Batavia Road. My wife Catherine and I have been neighbors of the Forest Preserve for about 35 years. Also neighbors to some of the folks, residents on the call today. I'll limit my comments and questions to kind of clarifications, and I do have a lot of the same concerns that Brooke, Rose, and also Connie. But when I take a look at, and I don't have the reference page numbers, but a couple things as I reviewed the 2007 Old Town Plan, there is a diagram in there that shows two options for the potential trail along the river. One is characterized as the west side plan, and which is the one that is referenced in the proposal for the Warrenville Grove path. And then there's another potential trail that actually runs on the east side. And I'm wondering, I don't keep as close to these issues as I probably should, but I do remember that there were two options at one time that were being considered. And I'm wondering what the thought process was that got us from the Old Town Plan that shows both options to the proposal now that is on the west side that's adjacent to residents' property. There's some language in the proposal, or I'm sorry, in the Old Town Plan that says there's sufficient land area appears to exist for a Riverwalk trail on the west bank of the river without causing undue disruption to the adjoining residents. So I guess my second question would be, how was that determined on that it would be without causing undue disruption to the adjoining residents? Is that something that was just a recommendation by the land or the third party that prepared the document, or is this a opinion of the city of Warrenville? Those are really my two questions.
Okay, thank you. We can, like I said, we can add that answer, a little deeper answer to that on the project website and look into that a little bit more.
Thank you.
If I could just, this is Ron Menser, Community Builder. If I could ask Mr. Toth if he could, it would be helpful for us as we evaluate his questions and do our best to respond to them in a professional manner. If he could send an email or give either Christine or I a call so he can identify the sections of the plan that he's referring to. So that
Yeah, I can certainly do that. I couldn't do it all on top of my laptop during the
sure.
Zoom call,
No, I
so
appreciate that.
I'll get you those references, Ron. No problem.
That we're working from the same thing. Thank you.
Mhm.
All right, thank you, Tim. Looks like Gretchen Dieter has a comment. Gretchen, would you like to state your comment? Or I can just repeat it in the comment section. She said, I like the idea of lookout area. Next person is Lucy Hawk. You have a comment if you'd like to unmute yourself. Looks like Lucy, you're unmuted, but I cannot hear you.
Christine, she put in the comment box that her microphone isn't working.
Oh, gotcha. Sorry, I didn't scroll down. Okay. Lucy, if you would like to email either Ron or myself your comment, like I said, we'll have our emails are on the project website and they'll be at the end of the presentation after the comments. Or you can put it in the chat box as well. Byron Miller, you said you'd like to comment?
Sorry, I commented earlier, so I'm.
Okay, sorry. Yes, you did. I'm just going down the list. All right, thanks, Brian. Elizabeth Burdette, if you'd like to.
Yeah, thank you. So I just wanted to jump in first, give a little bit of history. We're avid cyclists. We cycle like 3 times a day, every day, no matter the weather. And we are big time walkers, etc. And we are way opposed to this. We live at 414 Batavia Road. We also have 2 kids that are high special needs disabled. And so for people that think that this is like a great idea for kids with disabilities, we have plenty of paths. And actually one of the best things for kids that are disabled is to be in nature, which is undisturbed. It's actually shown therapeutically that it's better for them to be walking like in the woods if they can, or even do some of the like off-road wheelchairs. And I'm not really sure what it's adding. Like we have nothing to get but to gain because we use the trails all the time. But I've never been like, oh man, I wish there was a trail behind my backyard or on the other side of the river. I mean, it seems a little bit excessive, and it seems a little bit like trying to be something that Warrenville really isn't. Like it's all about having nature and pathways that are in use. But I mean, there's times that we're walking and we don't see anybody for miles. So now we're going to do another expense and for what? And frankly, I don't love the idea of having a path that my backyard backs up to. One of the things we really liked in buying a house here was that we back up to the woods and it's private. And if we wanted a house in Naperville, we would have bought a house in Naperville. And we just don't. Like that's part of the charm of Warrenville. And to take that away seems a little bit like we're trying to recharacterize the city. And I don't know that that's the right thing to do. I don't know. I mean, we've talked to all our friends in town and all our neighbors, and they all say the same thing. Like if we just walk back there and disturb a stick that's fallen down, we'll get a citation. And now it's all of a sudden okay to just like clear cut trees and put down. I mean, it just seems, I know I sound a little bit impassioned about this, but I am, because I bought a house here with these confines around it, and to change that seems I just don't know who's asking for it and what it's going to add. Like, there are a lot of other things I'd like to see the city have and focus on before an extra path, when we have so many that, you know, aren't even necessarily maintained at the top level that they could be. And I think that we need to focus on what we have and not get, I guess, sidetracked by what we could have or the possibilities, because we do have this land. Because once you clear cut these and once you put a path down, you can't go back. You can't get those big trees back. You can't get that wildlife back. And I'd really like to know who is requesting this, and if the people that are requesting it are going to be directly impacted, and how much they're going to use it. I mean, and how much are they using their current trails? We're on the trails all the time, and they're lovely and they're amazing, and I can't say enough good things about them. But if we overdevelop the city, we run the risk of undermining the character of the town. And I'm opposed to that. End comment.
Thank you, Elizabeth, for your comments. The next person on the group chat list that would like to ask questions, it looks like Rita Dolan. You had some questions relating to maintenance. So under our, I can just quickly answer that because we have an IGA here with the Forest Preserve. Under that IGA agreement, other than the costs provided by the Forest Preserve of the $250,000, the path will be solely on the Forest Preserve's property and will be maintained by the Forest Preserve. Would you like to ask your other questions as well to be part of the recording? I don't hear her, Rita or Rick. However, they also asked, other than who will repair damages during flooding, they also ask, is the cost of mowing grass in the clear zone and the cost of maintenance of this native plants included? Is the width of the clear zone adequate? Is it possible to put the path on the other side of the river to avoid the floodplain? Like I said, we can add those questions to our Q&A that will be available on the project website. Looks like Bob Pebble has raised his hand to provide a comment. Bob, would you like to make your comment?
Yes, I'm the Planning Commission representative for the Trailhead project. For anyone who doesn't know what that is, it's a development of the area across from City Hall where the parking lot is, around the gazebo, et cetera, where the trail runs by. And that's a big project to try to make it more available and kind of a base camp for people using the Prairie Path and using Warrenville as a center to do that. And that's going to attract an awful lot of people to utilize that parking lot, which is underutilized, make Warrenville a real place to start and stop your trails. It's going to have an actual indoor bathroom. It's going to have a bike repair station. There's an awful lot of improvements that are going on in that area that are going to make it very valuable to the Prairie Path. And a couple of the things that have been discussed, or at least with me, is that changing the parking lot into a permeable surface is not in the budget. We have a gazebo there. They're spending money to make that ADA accessible. It's above ground. I would rather have something like a pavilion nearby where people can have lunch, things like that. My opinion on what we're talking about tonight is that, you know, there's plenty of ways for people to get north and south to the Prairie Path without us putting down some more asphalt. If you're thinking about cutting down even one single tree to put down asphalt in Warrenville, then to me, people don't understand what this town's all about or why we're working so hard to make it a great place to live. Spending $550,000 for a ribbon of asphalt to connect, you know, the Grove needlessly with the Prairie Path just doesn't make any sense to me at all. there's other things we could do with this money that'd be far better benefit for the city than a little bit of asphalt.
Thank you, Bob, for your comments. Looks like Taylor Burdette raised the hand for comments.
Yeah. Yes, thank you so much for your time. So I wanted to first, I live on Batavia Road. Backyard backs up to what would be this project. The biggest concern I have is that you're going to open for pedestrians or whomever to navigate behind our houses. And I think that's a big security concern for us. And I've heard that second by many people. And I think that that's just a huge deal. For us, we're on the more wooded portion of what would be this path. And that just obviously leaves the door open for anyone to kind of just hide back there. And that to me is like a big concern, especially when we have kids that are in the backyard. I don't need people just kind of wandering through and peeking in at them. You know, that's a huge safety concern for us. As far as the just other people using it, does the city have any plans on how safety equipment, or if there needs to be an emergency, someone has broken their arm on the path, of how they're going to get to that individual through this strip of area? Are they going to utilize backyards, or are they going to have to use, through the ends, whether that's the Warrenville Grove or on the River Drive section? That's just a question. Is there anything as far as discussing that?
In terms of how it would get accessed,
gaining access, because there's multiple, family homes that have fences, so you're not going to allow direct access. So are they going to have to go through the prairie path to actually get to the individual, or are they going to be utilizing people's backyards?
Yeah, I mean, I think that type of question would have to be run through, obviously, the Forest Preserve and fire and police. So we could try and reach out to them and obviously provide that information to you. Specifically, if you'd like to email Ron or myself that question, we can get you that information specifically. But we can also put it obviously on the website, since it might be a question for other residents who live along Batavia as well.
Okay, well, wonderful. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you for your comments. Looks like, so if there's anyone else who would like to make a comment, I think we've gone through the list on the Zoom group chat. If there's anyone else, I guess you can raise your hand. If there's anyone actually on the phone that's listening in and would like to make a comment, please state your name and you can make your comment. Obviously, also you can email us like we've been saying, but if you'd like to make your comment and you're on the phone, please make it now. Okay. We have the comment from Lucy Hawk. Her microphone wasn't working, but in the comment center, it says, my comment is to thank the city for offering this format in which to hear from people in our city to voice their thoughts. Thank you, Lucy, for that feedback. We're trying obviously to get this information out to everyone, obviously during this coronavirus COVID crisis right now. We thought this was the best way to do it. And we're trying to provide all outlets. That's why anyone can come in actually to City Hall to look at exhibits. We will have this PowerPoint presentation available on the website as well. And obviously you can always email us or give us a call if there are any other comments. Looks like Brooke Leathers, you said Taylor Leathers has one comment, but he just made a comment. So I just want to clarify if he has another one or not.
Hi, my name's Taylor Leathers. I am her daughter. I live on Riverview Drive as well. I've been living here for my whole life. I'm 17. I would just like to ask about what is the safety precautions that are going to be taking. There are a lot of small children that live on this street that would have, like the river right now, there is like a path blocking. There's a lot of stuff blocking the water from the kids just running up to it. And with this asphalt, it would make a very easy path to the water. The water gets high a lot of times during the year and it goes very fast. My whole life I've been warned about not going near the water when it's this fast because it can easily take you away. So I'm just wondering, what's the safety precautions? There's going to be a lot of people that are walking on this path that aren't used to living near water. Also, is the path going to be closed during times of the flooding? So my mom did talk about how the river does flood all the time and that path will be flooded multiple times during the year. So is it going to be closed during times of flood? Are people going to be in danger using this path? I would just like to ask about that.
Okay, thank you, Taylor, for your questions and comments. Like we said, we can put those the answers on that FAQ that we'll have on the website. And if there's anybody else who would like to comment, please raise your hand or add it into the Zoom group chat. We'll wait for a moment. Okay, I think we've heard everyone who wants to make a comment or a question on this Zoom meeting. We will follow up or finish up with this next slide, which is next steps. So where do we go from here? We've obviously listened to everyone's comments and questions. And like we said, we will have the question or answers to the questions on our website. If you also would like to email us separately your questions, you can do so as well. If you don't see them on the website, it's just the easiest way to provide that to a greater audience. Like I said, our community development department is open and you can view the detailed exhibits in person. On the website, there is a public input survey. Please feel free to complete that online survey. It'll be available until about close of business on Friday, November 27th. This will allow us enough time to compile the survey and create the document in the memo for the committee of the whole meeting on December 14th. Obviously, you can always contact us, city staff, to discuss specific concerns. Email or phone number will be available on the next slide. It's also available on our city website. And also try and send those in by close of business on November 27th, again, to give us enough time to compile them. Obviously, if we get it, a day or so after that, it's not the big deal, but we're trying to give staff enough time to compile everything in the report to City Council. So again, thank you everyone for coming to our Warrenville Grove public information and input meeting. I think it was pretty successful. Everyone did a great job with, maintaining, being very, very respectful of the presenters and obviously of each other. I think this worked out really good. Again, my name is Christine Hocking. I'm the senior civil engineer for the city of Warrenville. My contact information is there on the slide, as well as my phone number, email and phone number, as well as Ron's email and phone number as well. So if you'd like to contact us at any time, please feel free to email us. And also I have the project website link shown on this slide. It is also available at the beginning of the group chat there. That's where the survey will be, as well as all of our other information, exhibits, summary, history, etc. We will also place this PDF on there. This meeting was recorded, so we will try and put that up on the YouTube website for others to watch if you'd like to do so. So I will also put that link on the project website. Our project website is kind of the keeper of everything for our project. So with that, I'd like to thank everyone again for attending, and I hope that everyone has a good rest of the night. Thank you very much.